It's the dawn of a new year and you're looking for a new MMO to help you totally fail all of your New Year's resolutions. And you may be considering trying Classic WoW, but the problem is, whether you are a new player or a returning player, Classic WoW at first can be quite overwhelming, as there are so many versions of Classic WoW now instead of just the one. But I promise you, it's not that complicated to be honest, and by the end of this video you will understand what all different versions are all about and the pros and cons of each of them. So there are now 5 versions of the game: Fresh Classic Anniversary Realms, Classic Era Realms, Seasonal Discovery Classic Realms, Cataclysm Classic, and also Hardcore. Let's begin with Fresh Classic Realms. These realms launched on the 21st of November, but don't let that dishearten you, it is definitely not too late to play on these realms. Fresh Classic rolls the clock back to 2004. You played a game on the last patch of vanilla World of Warcraft before any expansions, but the content releases progressively. For instance, right now, only Molten Core and Onyxia's Lair have been released, and soon the Blackwing Lair raid will release. On these realms, you will get to see all of Vanilla WoW's content yet again, and eventually these realms will progress into the Burning Crusade expansion yet again, just like the original Classic did. Now, one way to get caught up very quickly on your leveling journey so you don't fall too far behind is to get the Rested XP add-on. You can try the add-on totally free up until level 20, and this is a step-by-step guide made by the world record holding speed levelers for the game, so check it out in the description of this video. It's also a really good way to support this channel and help me to do this full time. But anyway, let's move on. So these fresh realms have actually released with even more changes than Classic WoW did. First, we finally have dual spec. There's no debuff or buff limits in raids. If you didn't know, the limit was originally 16, which meant many classes couldn't use all of their abilities. There's also the chrono boon displaces that are available at launch. What these do is they store your world buff so that they don't fall off when you die, and you can just use them again when you're inside your raid. They've also fully implemented a really good pre-made looking for group tool, but this isn't a dungeon finder queue tool or anything like that. You don't get instantly teleported to the dungeon. There's also a system in place to force faction balance, and GDKPs are totally banned on these servers. They've also reduced the amount of realms, so we basically only have one mega server for each kind of server, so one for PvP, one for PvE, and one for hardcore. And this is great because it means this time round servers won't die off, and you won't have to transfer off your server in the future. Now, Classic Vanilla WoW is a proper old-school MMO. It isn't an endgame-focused theme park MMO with a fast leveling journey that needs to be rushed. Classic has always been about the slow burn adventure of exploration, finding hidden quests, and just enjoying all of the open-world group content. And this means that the open world of Vanilla is always so populated with other players. The questing can be difficult if you play recklessly. You can't just pull multiple enemies and cleave them down. The open world is a real threat. It's always beneficial to not go alone. There are many quests that are much easier with a friend or two. That kind of social interaction is what Classic WoW is all about. It encourages you to make friends, add people to your friend list, join guilds to make groups in the future. It is much more of a chill, social, adventure-focused MMO. Some low-level quests even require a group of 5 people. Grouping is encouraged and heavily rewarded. This also goes for the endgame raiding scene. Raiding in Classic WoW has always been more about socialising with your guildmates on Discord, chilling out and killing some dragons. Yes, it can be challenging at times, particularly if people don't listen, but it is nowhere near as mechanically challenging as more modern MMOs like Cataclysm Classic and Retail World of Warcraft. Class design is also much more down to earth and simple, but not simple in the respect that it's easier or anything. But every class feels way more unique because every kind of utility ability or defensive cooldown or a offensive cooldown hasn't been given to every single class yet. Classes are way less homogenized and similar to each other. This also does mean that PvP can be very imbalanced with certain classes going against certain classes, but it's also incredibly fun, and honestly I think it's easier to pick up because every class's toolkit is smaller, so it's easy to figure out counters. It's way less complicated than a PvP in future expansions, and that's likely why PvP is not as anywhere near as popular as it used to be back in the day on Retail World of Warcraft. But there's no real ranked setting for PvP in Classic. It's way more casual. You just kind of do battlegrounds, with your friends to grind honour to increase your rank, which unlocks better gear. And because there's so many reasons to go into the open world and you don't get instantly teleported to everywhere, there's also a lot of world PvP. Even just going to your raid, if your guild raid, that you're probably going to end up in trouble with another raiding guild or something, or in the process of trying to get all of your world buffs. There's always something happening in the open world, and the open world feels so much more alive. Now, Classic Era realms are basically everything I've just said, but these realms have had all the content released now for a few years, so they already have an established community. You can play these realms and basically not have to wait for new content to release, but be mindful that these realms do have a smaller population, and the GDKP scene is pretty big on these realms, and it has inflated the economy a lot. Next, we have Seasonal Discovery Realm. So the premise of these realms is, imagine everything I've just said about Classic, but with some new content and many class changes. They changed some of the leveling up dungeons into raids like Blackfathom Deeps, Nomagon and Sunken Temple, all with new loot. There's actually a lot of new loot in this game. They also added a new dungeon called Demonfall Canyon to Ashenvale. Expect lots of demons within a Druid Barrow Den, and Karazhan Crypts is a new instance on the way, which is a new 5-player dungeon with a very unique theme and a unique mechanic. That's coming out on the 29th of January. They changed the raid difficulties of all of the old school raids, adding more difficulty versions, obviously with loads of better loot and totally new loot, totally new like special items and loads of gimmick items, and they also changed AQ40 to be 20-man. Now, the world bosses are now instant, meaning that everyone can now get a chance to smash these bosses, and it isn't just like one guild on the server who nabs it every week. There's also a lot of new class quests, expanded lore, and some new world PvP events. My favourite is the Blood Moon event. That is a free-for-all PvP event in Stranglethorn Vale with groups capped at 5 players. You can get some pretty cool cosmetic rewards from that world event. Now, class changes mainly come in the form of new class runes. You engrave these onto your armor pieces to unlock new active and passive abilities. The most notable is allowing Warlocks, Shamans, Paladins and Rogues to tank, Mages to heal, and more DPS specs that weren't viable are now viable. Classes are way more balanced and have multiple different playstyles now. You can really just play anything you want, just like you could in Wrath Classic. Obviously, some classes are better than others. I'd recommend looking at Warcraft log DPS data in the upper 95% percentile so that you know which specs don't utterly suck on the DPS meters to avoid disappointment. You don't want to level something up to level 60 and then realise, oh wait, I'm not going to get invited to raids because my DPS sucks. And because of all the changes to Seasonal Discovery, the meta is still evolving and changing with every phase. You can now also get all of your runes from a vendor in the starting area, so you won't have to fall behind other players and have to go through all the arduous steps in order to get your best in slot runes. You can just nab them off a vendor. It's that simple now. It's also important to note that all of the weapon specialization racials can now be also unlocked as runes, so races are also way more balanced in this version of Classic. Seasonal Discovery is now up to Phase 7. That sounds daunting. It sounds like, oh, it's way too late to start, but it really isn't. Okay, fair enough, Naxxramas is arriving shortly, but this doesn't mean it's too late to start the game, because there's now a 150% XP boost, loads of catch-up gear mechanics and content at level 60, and they're releasing new content after Naxxramas, so, you know, Bob's your uncle. Cataclysm Classic is the continuation of the original Classic WoW that was released, well, technically a re-release, in 2019. These realms have been active for 5 years, and they are progressing back through all of the World of Warcraft expansions. Mesa Pandaria will be released in the summer of 2025. Cataclysm is currently at the Firelands patch. Now, Cataclysm is a much more endgame theme park kind of MMO now. The raids are very fun and high quality, and so is the PvP, to be honest, but be mindful that the PvP community is only really active on Alliance and on certain realms. If you're looking for an MMO more about raid logging with quality, difficult raid content and very fun and diverse class design, then Cataclysm Classic is your best bet. But don't expect the open world to be as busy as it is in Fresh Classic, as people just level up quickly now with a dungeon finder which you instantly get teleported to. If you don't have a lot of time to play an MMO, Cataclysm Classic might be more up your street because it does cater to people who have less time to play. You can instantly teleport to a lot of the content most of the time and get summoned by your raid guild. The population is surprisingly still very decent. I don't think you'll struggle to find a good raiding guild, to be honest, to smash the Cataclysm content, but be mindful that heroic mode raids do require a lot more skill than your average classic WoW raid. There's also a lot more min-maxing involved when it comes to optimizing your character with reforging, gemming and stuff like that. Cataclysm also has more races and classes unlocked, such as the Death Knight, and then the races are Draenei, Blood Elf, Worgen and Goblin. The original vanilla world of Azeroth also got a total revamp, so don't be expecting the old vanilla world that you know and love. It has been changed. Now, I wouldn't say it's necessarily worse, it's just different, better for different reasons, I suppose. There's a lot new quests, and I would say it's much more linear story focused. There's a lot more voice acting, and the story of each and every zone is communicated much better because you don't have to sit there reading quest text. Although, just as a side note, there's an add-on called Voiceover, which adds voice acting to all of the original vanilla quests if you're going to play Fresh Classic. New to Cataclysm Classic, they also added extra difficulty modes to the heroic dungeons to help people gear up for the latest raid content, so again, you're really not going to fall behind. Since there are way more realm options for Cataclysm Classic, I'd recommend checking out Ironforge Pro, because this gives you a good idea of what servers are, well, dead and which ones aren't. For instance, if you only want to play PvP for Cataclysm Classic, then you're going to have to pick a realm that has a high alliance population, as people generally only PvP on alliance because the ratios are just better on alliance. And lastly, we have the Hardcore Realms. There are currently two versions of the Hardcore Realms. You've got Hardcore Classic Era Realms, which are basically the same state as Classic Era Realms. All of the content has been released. And then you have Hardcore Fresh Realms. These were released alongside I really can't talk at a minute. Kind of losing the will to speak. These realms were released alongside Fresh Classic, and these realms will progressively release the content, just like Fresh Classic Anniversary Realms will. Obviously, the big difference on these realms is that when you die, you can no longer play your character. They will permanently be dead as a ghost. It doesn't matter if you're in a group or level 60, you die, you have to go again. But it's not all doom and gloom, because when you do die, you can transfer your character for free to a Fresh Classic realm if you're playing on Fresh Hardcore, or Hardcore Era realm if you were playing Hardcore Era. Now obviously the Fresh Hardcore realm has a higher population, so it's much easier to find groups on that realm, but the Hardcore Era realms aren't totally dead or anything. They still have a decent population, you'll still find people in the open world. So if you're looking for a more chill and quiet challenge, then the Hardcore Era realm might be a better option for you. Well, now hopefully you understand each version of the game a little better. Every version has a very decent population, so it isn't really something you need to worry about anymore, to be honest. Yes, the population is more split over different versions of the game, but every version of the game is going pretty strong. Just remember, like I said before, go on Ironforge Pro, gives you a good estimation of the population of each server, so you don't pick a server that is dead. I'll leave that linked in the description, along with class picking guides for every single version of the game to help you pick a class, because obviously that is probably the video that you're going to click on next. It is the next logical step. But anyway guys, if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. There's loads more videos like this coming soon, and for other MMOs if you're interested in that kind of thing. But anyway, ciao.